While cleaning the house one afternoon, I stumbled upon an old iPhone my husband had used back in high school. The screen lit up with a faded wallpaper, and my breath caught when I realized what it was. In the picture, my husband was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. His eyes soft, his expression completely unguarded. Someone was kissing him on the cheek, and through the lens, I could almost feel the warmth of that moment. But what hit me harder than anything was recognizing who it was. The person kissing him was Jenna Morales, the woman he called his younger sister, the same person who had once played matchmaker to bring the two of us together. I had never thought about intruding on Logan Pierce's private past, never wanted to. But something Jenna had said when she returned from years away had unsettled me so deeply that the thought of restraint simply disappeared. It happened just last week on Logan's birthday. I had poured myself into preparing something special for him. I went out of my way, even reaching out to his best friend, hoping for a clue about what he might want. All I got was a shrug and a flat answer that he seemed to be living like a monk these days. No desires, no excitement, nothing that caught his interest. The heaviness in my chest grew because, truthfully, Logan had always been that way. Calm, detached, seemingly without flaw, like a glass of cold water, bland, clear, and impossible to hold against him. But I loved him, and when you love someone, you can't help but hope for some kind of response. A birthday surprise should feel like a surprise. I had prepared everything I thought he might enjoy, including myself. Following my best friend's advice, I'd even bought a delicate, alluring nightgown, hoping to add a spark to our evening. I had filled our bedroom with thoughtful touches, each detail carefully chosen for him. When Logan walked in, he smiled politely, but the smile felt like a formal courtesy. He complimented me in a distant, practiced way, then patted my head with a gentle, "You're wonderful." But he quickly added that tonight wasn't my ovulation cycle, and besides, he had just smoked. I could still smell the faint trace of tobacco on his skin. Was that all we were? Just a couple waiting for the right timing to make a baby? I looked at him, his jaw set tight, his eyes hauled and still like a frozen lake, and then glanced down at myself, feeling like a gift wrapped up and waiting to be unwrapped. The frustration rose in me until I couldn't hold it back anymore. I grabbed the front of his shirt and forced him to look at me. Without thinking, I kissed him. Was Logan really a man with no desire at all? If so, why had he married me, just to place me as a piece of decoration in his life? The kiss deepened, becoming something more urgent, almost a demand. At first, he turned his head away, trying to avoid it, but I didn't stop. My body pressed against his, like an octopus clinging to its prey, holding him tight so he couldn't slip away. The air between us shifted, and when I caught a glimpse of his eyes, they were tinged with a faint red. A thrill of triumph surged in me. I wasn't some fragile, delicate wife married for nearly a year. I knew how to keep what was mine. Then, without warning, Logan slid one arm around my waist and lifted me effortlessly, his mouth meeting mine with sudden force. I felt myself pushed back onto the bed, my head tilted up, the rush of victory heating my veins. But it lasted only a moment. The tenderness that had begun to spark in his gaze vanished the second his phone rang. The name flashing on the screen was Jenna. Her voice on speaker was trembling, frantic. Her child had a high fever, she said, and she didn't know what to do. I could hear the tears in her words, the raw panic. Logan didn't hesitate. He bolted for the door. I wrapped a blanket around myself and followed, grabbing his coat to hand to him, but he didn't even notice. He still had his house slippers on, and on the wrong feet at that. I stood there a little stunned, but I told myself I hadn't married the wrong man. He was caring toward his family, I thought. Someday he would make a good husband and father. That was what I told myself, clinging to the belief, even as I watched him run out the door toward her. I had always found reasons to forgive him, to excuse the things that made my chest tighten. Maybe that was why Logan Pierce never needed to tread carefully around me. When Jenna Morales returned to San Francisco, it was without warning. After graduating college, she had left our hometown behind, chasing the idea of seeing a wider world. She spoke of wanting to experience life, to breathe different air, but this time she came back with a little boy in tow. None of us dared to ask questions. The jagged scars that still lined her wrists said more than words could. I could only imagine the force she had once used to hurt herself. Lately, Logan had worn a constant furrow between his brows whenever he looked at her, his eyes full of grief. It was as if her pain had settled on his shoulders too. The closeness between them stirred something restless in me. They weren't blood relatives, but they had always treated each other like family. Something both of them had told me from the beginning. In fact, it was Jenna who had played matchmaker for us. Because of her, I never questioned their bond. Logan had said he saw her as his sister, and since the day I married him, I tried to see her the same way. She came back to us carrying invisible wounds as heavy as the physical ones. I reached out to the best doctors I could find, hoping to help her heal, even if it was just to lessen the scars. I remember handing her a folder of treatment options I'd researched. That was when something in her snapped. "Is it that ugly?" she asked. Her voice trembling, her eyes clouded with something close to despair. I panicked, stepping forward to comfort her, but she suddenly grabbed my arm and yanked up the long sleeve of my blouse. Her voice was sharp, almost accusing. "Aubrey, what are you pretending for? It's so hot outside, why are you wearing long sleeves? Are you hiding something from me, or do you just want to watch me look pathetic? Well, are you satisfied now?" Her nails dug into my skin, a sharp sting shooting up my arm. I fought to keep my tone calm. "Jenna, it's not like that. I've always worn long sleeves. I thought it might help if..." But I didn't even finish before she shoved me away. Her hand caught the edge of the tea set on the table, sending steaming tea and boiling water spilling onto the floor. The crash of porcelain breaking rang out in the stillness of the house. The noise brought Logan running from his study. He rushed to her, catching her arm to stop her from spiraling further. His eyes were full of worry, fixed only on her scalded hand, already flushed red and swelling. I stood frozen, unsure what to do, until I felt the hot splash of tea soaking through my pants, burning my skin. Before I could move, Logan's voice cut through the air. "What are you standing there for? Get the burn cream." His eyes barely glanced at me, and even that glance carried the edge of impatience. My throat tightened, but I told myself not to make things harder for him, not when Jenna was in such a state. Ignoring the sting on my leg, I hurried to the bathroom to find the ointment, then brought it to him. Not once did his eyes meet mine. The air in the room felt too heavy to breathe, so I grabbed my coat and left. I thought about going to my mother's, but I didn't want to worry her. After all, Logan and I had been married just over a year. She had warned me before the wedding that he might be too cold, too distant. But I had told her stories about how he had pursued me all the way through college, how he had convinced her to let me marry him. The burn on my leg throbbed more with each step until I couldn't walk any farther. I found a small cafe nearby and sank into a corner seat. My thoughts churned, tangled and messy. But as always, I reasoned with myself. They had shared a deep bond for so many years. And right now, Jenna was in a dark place. I shouldn't let my heart keep score. I was still lost in my thoughts when a message from Jenna Morales appeared on my phone. "Aubrey, I'm sorry, I wasn't feeling well earlier and my brother was a little panicked. Where are you? He's really worried about you." I stared at the screen, my chest tightening with frustration. I didn't want to see Logan Pierce right now. I was about to type out a polite refusal when another message from Jenna came through. "Aubrey, I'm truly sorry for bothering you. My brother has been working late every night lately. He hasn't had a proper rest." It was true, Logan had been busier than usual these past weeks. Guilt seeped into me, softening the edges of my anger. Maybe his life had been too exhausting already, and my irritation had only added to his burden. I texted Jenna my location and said I would head back soon, wrapping my hands around the warm coffee cup. I looked out the large cafe window at the flow of people moving briskly along the street. Slowly, I gathered my scattered emotions, telling myself it was time to return. As soon as I stepped outside, I saw him running toward me. My throat tightened, and before I could stop it, tears welled up and spilled down my cheeks. He sighed gently, brushing them away with his thumb. "Why are you crying? Who upset you?" I turned my head, unwilling to meet his eyes. He bent down, trying to catch my gaze, and when I pushed him away in frustration, he pulled me into his arms instead. "I'm sorry, I was wrong. I know you've been trying so hard." With my face pressed against his coat, my voice came out in a shaky whisper. But I was burned too. His grip loosened immediately, panic flickering in his tone. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Tears blurred my vision as I looked up at him. "The moment you left the room, you only saw your sister. You didn't even see me, and you still blamed me." The burn was on my thigh, not something I could show him there on the street. "You can't see it here. Let's just go home." His voice softened. "All right, let's get you home first. Try to bear with it a little longer." I pouted. "It hurts so much." Without hesitation, he crouched down. "I'll carry you." It was rare for him to show this kind of patience. But before I could climb onto his back, Jenna suddenly appeared. She smiled faintly, a teasing lilt in her voice. "Wow, you two are so affectionate, it's making me jealous." Her words pierced through the fragile moment like a needle. Logan straightened so abruptly I nearly lost my balance. I barely caught myself before falling, only for Jenna to hurry over and grab my hand, her eyes glistening. "Aubrey, I'm sorry. Are you still angry with me?" I had always been uneasy around her tears, knowing how fragile her emotions could be. Forcing a small smile, I tried to soothe her. "No, of course not. I'm just not feeling well. I understand." Logan took us both out to dinner that evening. Under the table, he squeezed my hand and whispered, "I'll put ointment on your burn when we get home." The blister on my thigh throbbed with every step, and all I wanted was for the meal to end so I could lie down. But as we crossed the street together, his eyes drifted toward Jenna's solitary figure, walking a few steps ahead. Without hesitation, he let go of my hand and rushed after her. When he caught up to her, he glanced back at me, looking conflicted. I smiled faintly, giving a small wave to let him know I understood. But when I turned away, the ache in my chest made it hard to breathe. That night, he never came home. He had said he was only walking her back, but later he sent a message, "Jenna's not doing well, and there's the baby. I'm really worried." I sat on our bed staring at the blister that had popped and was now raw and throbbing. Still, I forced my fingers to type a reply. "Make sure you rest early. If you need anything, just call me, I'll come over." I told myself there was nothing to this, that it was only the circumstances. Jenna was in a bad place. This was just a situation neither of us could avoid. Sometimes she had brighter days, moments when she would smile and chatter about little details of her brother's life. Before I planned Logan's surprise birthday, I had asked her if he wanted anything special. She told me there was a dessert he used to love, glutinous rice balls and syrup, from a small shop near their old neighborhood. Though she didn't know if it was still open, she had even sent me the address. Back then, I had thought her thoughtfulness was touching. Now looking back, I realized how naive I had been. At that time, Logan was buried in a grueling project. He worked without pause, barely eating, and the weight had visibly fallen off him. I thought that if I could find something he truly liked, maybe he would at least eat a little. That weekend, on my only day off, I took the high-speed train to a small town Jenna had once mentioned. I wandered through winding streets for hours before I finally found the little shop she'd talked about. The moment I saw the sweet, glutinous rice balls, I bought them right away, placing them carefully in the thermal cup Logan had once given me. I even tucked that inside a large insulated bag to make sure they stayed warm until I reached him. That night, he was still working late, just as he had been all week. When I handed him the dessert, his first reaction was to refuse, assuming I had made it myself. I coaxed him gently, encouraging him to try just one bite, my eyes full of anticipation as I waited for the surprise on his face. Finally, not wanting to disappoint me, he took a small spoonful. A flicker of surprise crossed his face before he took another bite. Unable to hide my own smile, I told him where I had learned about the dessert, explaining that I had even tracked down the granddaughter of the shop owner in hopes of learning how to make it for him in the future. Before I could finish, he wrapped his arms around me from behind, his voice low and almost trembling against my ear. "Aubrey, I'm sorry." I lifted my head to kiss his chin, then playfully pressed my nose against his, as if in mock annoyance. "So you know you were wrong, huh? Then you'd better treat me better from now on." That night felt unusually warm, almost fragile in its tenderness. In that moment, I wanted nothing more than to hold on to this man forever, to give him everything good I had without reservation. Loving someone meant giving without keeping score. I believed love was like a scale. If I added enough to my side, he would naturally add to his. That belief fueled my hope, my careful plans, and the thoughtful gifts I prepared for him. But a week passed. Jenna's child had been discharged from the hospital, yet the gifts I had chosen for Logan still sat unopened. It would be a lie to say it didn't sting. I tried to soothe myself, telling my heart he was just too busy, that maybe he wasn't the kind of man who cared about small gestures. But I wasn't fooling Jenna. One afternoon, when she dropped by with her child and asked me to watch him for a while, I couldn't help asking, my tone layered with meaning, "Jenna, does your brother not really like me that much?" She laughed softly, her eyes full of gentle sympathy. "Aubrey, you're being silly. If he didn't like you, why would he marry you? No one can force my brother to do anything." I didn't answer, lowering my gaze instead. She went on, her voice sincere. "It's nothing like that. He's just not good at showing his feelings. You know, Aubrey, our family went through a lot. We lost our parents and he's always been guarded. My brother, he's actually a very lonely person. Could you help me take care of him a little more?" Her words sank into me one by one. I started wondering if the problem was me. Maybe I hadn't done enough. Maybe I needed to adjust to his closed-off ways, to his silence. He did like me, didn't he? Back in college, Jenna had told me herself that he liked me, even helping him send me small gifts. Back then, Logan had been attentive in quiet but meaningful ways. He once knitted me a scarf with his own hands, saved his meager allowance to buy me makeup, woke up early every day to reserve a seat for me in the library. He wasn't good with sweet words, but he showed his care through actions, consistent, thoughtful actions. But now he came home late every night and left before sunrise. Even on weekends, he rarely had a full day to rest. He seemed to live with a constant lack of security, always busy, always pushing himself. I could do nothing but ache for him, trying my best not to add to his stress. I forced myself to match his pace. Taking on projects I would have once turned down, tackling difficult tasks I would have avoided, thinking that if I could earn more money, maybe he would feel more at ease. And so life carried on like this until the day I stumbled upon a phone that had been forgotten for nearly 10 years. Love, I realized, is always a fragile balance between longing and fear, between holding on and wondering if it will slip away. I was grateful to Jenna Morales for being so thoughtful, for telling me every little thing about Logan Pierce's likes and dislikes. But at the same time, deep inside, I couldn't stop comparing. Why did she seem to know him better than I did his wife? We were husband and wife. Weren't we supposed to be the ones who understood each other better than anyone else in the world? So when I found that old phone, my curiosity became impossible to control. What was Logan like back in high school? Was he always this distant and reserved? Or had he once been an awkward boy who struggled to express his feelings? He had always been a nostalgic man, someone who disliked complications, and his passwords were often just a few familiar numbers. I didn't know whether it was because he never bothered to hide it from me, or because he'd nearly forgotten the phone even existed, but I found it tucked away in the pocket of an old suitcase. And once I turned it on, I couldn't stop. I went through the text messages, the photos. Piece by piece, the story of their relationship came alive. Every moment they loved each other, every small detail he had once given her. Each one felt like a knife to the chest. I saw how deeply he had once been in love, how he had once clung to her, how he had written pages-long messages, begging her to come back, how he had spent a whole week preparing a single gift just to see her smile. They weren't related by blood. They had every right to fall in love. But why drag me into it? What gave them the right to hurt me? Didn't I deserve an ordinary love? Was I the one who forced him to marry me? Then why did he waste my time? My love and trample all over my heart. I felt my chest rip open and I wanted to tell someone, anyone, but I didn't even know where to start. It was all too filthy to speak out loud. I left the house I had once so carefully built, feeling like I was running away from something poisonous. My mind was blank, my legs moving on their own. I didn't know how long I walked, only that I no longer felt my exhaustion. Memories overlapped in my head, meeting him for the first time, meeting Jenna, falling in love with him. I sat down on the steps by the river, opened my phone, and flipped through my photo album. In those pictures, Logan's smile was so bright, so full of life. He had once looked at someone with that kind of light in his eyes, had once loved that much. And then I saw a photo that made my heart stop. It was of a gray scarf patterned with little wheat stalks. Beside it was a small note drawn with a pink heart and a playful, pouty face, Logan Pierce. I spent a whole week knitting this. Don't even think about not wearing it or you're dead. The scarf in that picture was the exact scarf wrapped around my own neck. Every detail, the unstitched end, the small knitting mistakes, was identical. I froze. My ears rang until I could hear nothing at all. My mind went blank, except for one terrifying thought back then. When Jenna had given me the scarf, she had told me it was from her brother, that he had spent a week making it just for me. I had cherished it like a treasure. For years, every winter I wore it. I had even once complained to Logan about why he no longer put that much heart into things for me, whether he thought marriage meant he could stop trying. But now that thought inside me was growing darker and darker. Maybe from the very beginning, he had never put any real thought into me at all. The scarf around my neck suddenly felt like a noose tightening, cutting off my air. I yanked it off, but the suffocating feeling didn't go away. I was gasping, dragging in heavy breaths, but it was never enough. The sky darkened and my mood sank with it. 7 years of my youth. What had it all been for? I sat there swallowed by the darkness until Logan finally appeared. He came running breathless, his face pale with panic. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice sharp and demanding. Aubrey Sullivan, what the hell are you doing? Why aren't you answering your phone? Do you have any idea how hard I've been looking for you? I looked up at him, my gaze cold, my lips curling into a bitter smile. Why are you looking for me? He frowned, his voice urgent. Jenna lost control again. She cut her wrist with a knife. She's bleeding heavily right now and needs an immediate transfusion. You know the hospital doesn't keep much of our blood type in stock. Come with me. Logan Pierce didn't wait for an answer. He grabbed my arm and tried to pull me along. I yanked my arm back with all my strength. Of course I laughed, but the sound broke almost instantly into tears. Of course that's what I am to you. A free blood bag for you and your sister. A fool too easy to use. I have a rare Rh-negative blood type. The very first time I met Jenna Morales was because of that. She'd been in a terrible car accident, losing massive amounts of blood, and needed an urgent transfusion. Logan had sent out desperate messages to every school group he could think of. Back then, I was having dinner with friends. But life was more important than anything. I took a cab straight to the hospital, ignoring my own health. I've always been slightly anemic, but when I saw how close Jenna was to death, I gritted my teeth and donated 400 milliliters of blood. After that, I contacted my network of rare blood donors, asking for more people to come help. Together, we pulled her back from the brink. And this was how they repaid me. I didn't want to see Logan's face. I was afraid that if I stayed, I might lose control and drag him straight into the river beside us. It wasn't worth it, but he wouldn't let go, his grip tightening. Aubrey Sullivan, now is not the time to act crazy. If Jenna dies, do you have any idea what will happen? My voice was ice. What does her life have to do with me? He stared at me as if I had just spoken in another language, completely stunned that I could say something like that. His hand lifted as if to strike me, but I didn't flinch. I stared right back at him. In the end, he didn't hit me. Instead, he hauled me over his shoulder like I weighed nothing and started walking fast. I thrashed, screaming, "Put me down, Logan Pierce. I don't want this. No one has the right to force me." His voice was low, almost a growl, his bloodshot eyes fixed ahead. "A life is at stake, Aubrey. This isn't the time for your tantrums. Can't you think about the bigger picture? If Jenna dies, I will never forgive you, ever." My voice cracked into a shout, hot tears streaming down my cheeks. Did I cut her wrist? Did I cause this? Do I owe you people something? My blood is mine, Logan. Mine to give or not give. Put me down. But he didn't listen. Every step jarred me until nausea rose in my throat. I clawed at him, bit down hard on his shoulder, but my strength was nothing compared to his. I was nothing more than a puppet in his arms, dragged toward a fate I didn't choose. At the hospital, he still barked at me as if scolding a child. "Aubrey, stop being stubborn. This is important. You can't keep causing trouble like this. Jenna needs blood. You can't just abandon her." Looking at him, then all I saw was a stranger, cold, ruthless. The pain in my abdomen was sharp and constant, stealing my breath, but he still tried to force me toward the donor room. A nearby nurse finally stepped in, her voice tight with disapproval. "Do you want me to call the police?" I looked at her, eyes wet, unable to speak, but my heart swelled with gratitude. I gave the slightest nod. Logan turned to her quickly, suddenly calm. "We're husband and wife. My sister needs a transfusion urgently. I just want her to help." The nurse's brows drew together, her tone cutting. "Even between spouses, there's such a thing as respect. Her blood is her choice, not yours." His mouth opened, but no words came. Anger flashed hotter in his eyes. He turned back to me, voice biting. "Aubrey Sullivan, how long are you going to keep this up? Do you want Jenna to die? Is that it? Now you're faking being sick just to get out of it?" I went still. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. My throat felt stuffed with wet cotton. I couldn't push a word out. Did he really think I was nothing more than a free blood supply for his family? Did he think I had no right to refuse? My head pounded, my stomach twisted in waves of pain. In the end, I couldn't hold on any longer. My vision went black and I collapsed. I drifted into a dream so long it felt endless, a maze with no way out. No matter where I turned, Logan Pierce and his sister Jenna Morales were there, haunting shadows I couldn't escape. When I finally woke, my body was drenched in cold sweat. Logan was sitting at the edge of the bed, looking lost. For the first time, I saw him try to smile, an awkward, pitiful smile meant to please me. Jenna's already gotten blood from someone else. He hesitated, fumbling for words that wouldn't come. I stared at him, my eyes cold, saying nothing. Unable to bear my gaze, he turned away, reached into the nightstand and pulled out a small pill, placing it on the table in front of me. "I'm sorry, I didn't know you were pregnant. We're still young, just take this for now." The stabbing pain in my abdomen made me want to scream at him to get out, but I didn't have the strength to shout. Seeing me grimace, he crouched down in concern, reaching toward me. I grabbed the glass on the table and hurled it straight at his head. It hit his temple with a sharp crack. He turned to look at me, eyes wide with shock. Clenching my teeth through the pain, I spat out, "Get out. I don't ever want to see you again." He didn't move. He just stood there like a lifeless figure while I cursed him through my tears. I looked at the man I had loved for 7 years, and all I felt now was hatred consuming everything that love had once been. A single thought of revenge took hold, and I couldn't stop it. I picked up the pill and swallowed it. The child inside me was barely 2 months along. Because of Jenna's return, we had almost forgotten about trying for a baby, and when the news came, it had been a surprise. And now it meant nothing. I curled up on the bed, every spasm of pain making my body tremble. The cramps grew sharper, stronger, until I could no longer form words. Logan panicked, rushing to get a nurse, asking for painkillers. But the medication only made my contractions more violent. I ground my teeth, staring at him through the agony, my heart boiling with hatred. I wanted nothing more than to take a knife and tear both him and Jenna apart. Our eyes met, his held a flicker of guilt, maybe even fear, but to me it was nothing short of absurd. Who needed his remorse? I didn't want regret. I wanted him to suffer 100 times more than I was suffering now. Near midnight, I forced myself toward the bathroom. This time, when Logan tried to stop me, I didn't push him away. If I was losing my child, I wanted him to witness every second. I wanted the images burned into his mind so the nightmares would be his, not just mine. Blood kept pouring, soaking the tile floor. Large, dark clots fell heavily, mercilessly. Logan gripped my hand, his whole body shaking. His voice was unsteady. "Let me call the nurse. I'll call right now." But the moment he released me, my knees buckled. He had no choice but to catch me, fear carved into his face. Eventually, the tiny life inside me was expelled. I looked down at the small broken form that had been my child, the one I had longed for more times than I could count. From the operating room next door came the first cries of a newborn, slicing through the night like a blade stabbing deep into my chest. The sound was unbearable, grief and bitterness twisting together, tears spilling as my body went limp. Logan rushed to wrap a blanket around me, but I clutched his arm with the last of my strength and without warning sank my teeth into him. The metallic taste of his blood filled my mouth as it dripped down my chin. He cried out in pain, but I didn't stop until I had nothing left. Finally, I released him, my gaze frozen and unyielding. "Logan Pierce," I said, my voice shaking but sharp as glass. "This child died by your hands. Are you satisfied now?" He looked stunned, wounded even, but I didn't care. I sat on the sofa, my mind flashing back to all the times I had stood in the kitchen cooking for him, smiling as though my whole life had been about making him happy. Now those memories felt like someone else's life, someone naive and foolish enough to love a man like him. I never liked cooking, and I despised the smell of oil clinging to my clothes and hair. But because Logan Pierce had such a picky palate and a sensitive stomach, I always tried to make him the healthiest meals possible. Whenever I had the time, I stepped into the kitchen, afraid that restaurant food might aggravate his condition. Now all those memories swirl in my head like a cruel film reel, each frame dripping with bitterness. My care and effort were never treasured. They were taken for granted, something for him to trample on. I walked back to the bedroom and began packing. Only the essentials, important documents, and a few changes of clothes. I was exhausted. All I wanted was to get out fast. When I wheeled my suitcase into the living room, Logan was setting plates on the table. Smoke curled from the pan, the burnt smell filling the apartment and making me cough. He looked up, and the moment his eyes landed on the suitcase, his expression shifted, his brows knitting tightly. "Aubrey, what are you doing?" he demanded. "Nothing," I replied coldly. "It's just that all of this is meaningless now. Logan Pierce, let's get a divorce. He froze, stammering, "Why is this about the baby? I really didn't know." I gave a short, bitter laugh. "Of course you didn't know. You never know anything. Do you think I'm stupid?" His face darkened, not a trace of regret, only anger. "Why do you always have to twist the knife, Aubrey? If you want a divorce, fine. But don't come crawling back later," I smirked. "I won't. I'll have my lawyer draft the papers and send them to you today." Without another word, I pulled the suitcase toward the door. Outside, a light drizzle had begun to fall. I passed through the lobby, then stopped. Something inside me refused to leave like this, not because of him, but because I had finally realized I'd had enough. I couldn't keep hurting myself by staying. I stepped aside, took out my phone, and ordered an umbrella through a delivery app. The wait felt endless, pain twisted in my abdomen, forcing me to lean against the wall, half standing, half crouching, just to keep from collapsing. Then his voice cut through the rain, cold and laced with mockery. "Aubrey, take back what you just said. I'm giving you an out. You still have time to change your mind." He was holding a black umbrella, his long fingers gripping the handle so tightly that his knuckles had gone pale. I didn't answer. I didn't even look at him. I turned my back, refusing to meet his eyes. He closed the distance, reaching for my arm. I shook him off, my voice flat. His anger deepened. "We're both adults. Why are you being so stubborn? What do you think this will get you?" Thankfully, the delivery driver arrived then. I took the umbrella, ignored Logan's stunned look, and stepped into the rain without a word. I didn't go home. Instead, I booked a long-term hotel room. My plan was simple: finalize the divorce, take care of my health, and never look back. But the pounding in my head grew unbearable, so I texted Claudia Pearson, my closest friend. I gave her the short version of the story and asked if she could help me find a lawyer. When I woke from a long, heavy sleep, she was standing at the door, holding a container of chicken soup. She didn't say anything at first, just took in my pale face and sunken eyes, her brows furrowing in worry. She gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear, her voice trembling. "How did you let yourself get like this? You're so thin, Aubrey, so tired." I looked up at her, and the sight of her eyes, already glistening with tears, made my nose sting. I hadn't cried when I left that apartment. I hadn't cried when I told Logan I wanted a divorce. I thought I had been strong enough that I could handle it. But standing there, faced with Claudia's quiet, genuine care, the dam broke. She pulled me into her arms, holding me tightly. My tears fell freely, my voice breaking. Why was I so stupid? I gave blood to his sister, I helped take care of her, I cooked for him, She cut me off softly but firmly. "It's not your fault, sweetheart, it's theirs. They're the ones who were cruel. People who trample on love like that, it's only a matter of time before they pay the price." She kept holding me, her words of comfort soft but steady, easing the storm that had been raging inside me. Friends are the family we choose for ourselves, and in that moment, with Claudia Pearson's arms around me, I didn't feel abandoned anymore. I wasn't alone. The lawyer Claudia found for me worked quickly. By that afternoon, he had sent me the draft of the divorce agreement. After I reviewed it and discussed a few details, the final version went straight to Logan Pierce. I texted him clearly: if there was no problem, sign it immediately. Minutes later, he called, his voice sharp with irritation. "Aubrey Sullivan, you need to understand that once we do this, there's no going back." If this is because of Jenna, then I cut him off, my tone cold. "Logan Pierce, are you backing out now? Did you forget what you said when I left?" There was a pause, then he muttered, "As you wish," before hanging up on me. I waited all evening, but there was no response from him. Annoyance bubbled up, and I messaged again. "Is something holding you back?" His reply dripped with impatience. "Why are you in such a rush?" "I have other things to deal with." I shot back, "Fine. Since you're busy, maybe I should go talk to your sweet sister instead." "I'm sure she's not busy." "Aubrey, are you out of your mind? Whatever's between us has nothing to do with Jenna. If you're angry, take it out on me." "Oh, but you care about her so much. Sign the papers or I'll become the awful woman who bothers your precious saintly sister." It worked. Logan's weakness had always been Jenna Morales. The next day, he came with me to start the divorce proceedings. But under current law, there was a mandatory reconciliation period. I reluctantly completed the required steps, hoping that when the day came, he wouldn't try to backtrack. As my health improved, I returned to work. Unfortunately, my company was a main supplier for Logan's firm, so occasional contact was unavoidable. At first, we pretended not to know each other, keeping things polite but distant. But somehow, word of our divorce began to spread. 2 years ago, I had mentored a young intern named Victor Tong. He had just been transferred from another branch back to our office. Between adults, some things don't need to be said aloud to be understood. Victor often waited for me after work to drive me home. One night at a company banquet, he shielded me from drinking too much and even thoughtfully handed me a heating pad for my cramps. That was the night Logan lost his composure. He cornered me in a quiet hallway, pressing me against the wall, his face shadowed with anger. "Aubrey," he said in a low voice, "we haven't officially received the divorce certificate yet. Did you forget? Why are you in such a hurry?" I met his eyes, my voice cool. "Only 3 days left." His brows knitted tighter. "But for these 3 days, you're still my wife. Shouldn't you respect your husband?" A humorless laugh escaped me. "Now you remember I'm your wife." Where was that respect before he reached for me, but before he could? Victor appeared. His eyes narrowed at the scene, his expression dark. Ignoring Logan's furious glare, I let Victor take me away from the party. Life really does have a way of throwing curveballs. Only 3 days remained until we could finally walk separate paths. But the very next day, my mother was rushed to the hospital with a heart attack and needed immediate bypass surgery. The doctors warned that she couldn't endure any emotional shocks during her recovery. Coincidentally, one of Logan's old classmates was a specialist in this field. When I called to ask for details, that friend told Logan about my mother's condition, so of course he showed up at the hospital. In my mother's eyes, he was suddenly the attentive, caring husband, checking in on me, bringing things for her, acting like he'd never done me wrong. I kept my distance, thanked him politely, then quietly brought the conversation back to our divorce. I told him plainly, "Once my mother's stable, we can finalize the papers anytime." But he didn't stop there. Looking straight into my eyes, his voice low but pressing, "Logan Pierce," said Aubrey Sullivan, "why are you being so selfish? Maybe what happened to your mother is the chance God has given us. I can find you the best doctor. Make sure she's cared for better than anyone else could. Why don't we start over, and that boy, does he really understand you?" The warm yellow light cast his face into two halves, one swallowed by shadow, the other illuminated. For a moment, he felt like a stranger to me, this man I had once loved for 7 years. My lips curved into a bitter smile. "Fine," I said, my voice laced with sarcasm, "but don't regret it." Yes, why should I run? Running would only make them think they were right, only embolden them to keep trampling on me without guilt. So I moved back into our house. Logan started to change, or at least he wanted me to think he had. After my mother's surgery was a success, he prepared a candlelit dinner. On the table sat a bouquet of blooming roses and a meticulously plated steak. The trash bin held evidence of his earlier failed attempts, several discarded dishes. Holding a glass of wine, he looked at me gently. "Aubrey, let the past go, okay?" I didn't want to answer. I didn't want to face him. Running between the hospital and the office had left me drained. All I wanted was to retreat to my room. But when I opened the door, I found all my belongings had been moved into his bedroom. I glanced at the scene without a word and turned to leave, but he suddenly stepped forward, grabbed my hand, and yanked me back. Ignoring my struggle, he leaned in, trying to kiss me. My palm met his face with a sharp crack. His eyes widened in shock. My nails had scratched his neck, leaving a red mark streaked with blood. I looked at him once more, then bolted from the house as if escaping a nightmare. The next day, just as I was about to grab lunch after finishing my morning tasks, Jenna Morales blocked me in the lobby. Her voice shook with fury. "How could you hurt my brother like that?" I smiled, slow and challenging. "Take a guess." Her eyes went wide, her body stiffening. She stepped back a few paces, disbelief etched on her face. How ridiculous she had been, the one scheming to push me toward her brother, yet now she feared we might actually be together, terrified of a bond she couldn't control. That twisted logic. You could search every psychiatric ward in the city and never find another case quite like it. Not long after Jenna stormed off, I saw her post on social media. I should have realized long ago that I could never truly step out of this vicious circle. That's why I couldn't bring myself to care anymore. Her post painted her as the tragic victim, and it disgusted me so much I couldn't even finish my lunch. That evening I heard she had attempted suicide, and that Logan had been hit by a car while rushing to save her. My feelings were complicated. Half surprised, half unsurprised. Their lives had always been one long theatrical performance full of absurd melodrama. I only felt slightly disappointed that Logan hadn't died, just a facial injury and a limp in his leg. Jenna, as usual, cried endlessly, for her venting emotions always came before anything else. I remembered the time her child had a high fever. Instead of caring for the boy, she smashed everything in the house. Logan had to comfort her, leaving me to take the child in my arms. I stayed up for 2 or 3 nights nursing him back to health, only to soothe her later with sweet words, listening to her cry and berate herself, Aubrey. I'm so useless. I hate myself. And yet the next time something similar happened, she cried again, dumping the consequences on someone else. It was the same now. Logan was in too much pain to speak, yet still tried to console her. His friends called me repeatedly, begging me to come help. I refused at first until a text came from Logan himself. Do you really hate me so much that you can't even stand to look at me? How are you now? You're still alive, do you regret that? I stared at Logan Pierce's childish text messages and couldn't help but laugh. Maybe I should make a trip to see him. Why should I be the only one to suffer over all this? He'd never cared about such petty things before, so why not let him get a taste of it now? When I arrived at the hospital, I didn't do much, just kept myself calmer than Jenna Morales, that's all. She had brought her child along, and the boy's behavior was unusual. I'd once suggested she have him evaluated, but she accused me of harboring bad intentions. Right there in the hospital, the boy suddenly yanked out Logan's IV line, sending fluid spraying everywhere. Thankfully, I reacted fast enough to avoid getting any on me. Logan has always been picky about food. He won't touch onions, garlic, or ginger. Yet Jenna brought him nothing but dishes filled with exactly those ingredients. He forced down a few bites before setting the bowl aside. I handed him the meal I'd ordered from a restaurant kept warm in a thermos. His eyes lit up when he saw it, as though I'd given him something precious. He ate a few bites, then muttered defensively, "Aubrey, it's been so long since I've had your cooking. Being this sick, I can barely taste anything." I just gave him a thin smile and said nothing. He continued carefully, a trace of hope in his voice. "Aubrey, do you know how to make sweet rice wine dumplings now? When I get better, will you make them for me?" "I don't want to learn anymore," I said flatly. He went quiet for a moment, then forced a strained smile. "That's fine. I'll eat whatever you make." Jenna, unable to stand, the atmosphere, got up in a huff and started toward the door. But to her surprise, Logan called her back. For a moment, a smug smile tugged at her lips until his voice turned cold. "Take your kid with you. It's not convenient here." Her eyes widened in disbelief, but Logan didn't look at her again. His gaze stayed fixed on me. If the situation weren't so inappropriate, I might have laughed. In the days that followed, I stopped by occasionally, just enough to leave my mark. Soon enough, it was time for Logan's stitches to come out and for him to be discharged. A long, narrow scar now ran across his face, making him look harsher, almost menacing. Jenna was the one to remove his bandages. The moment she saw the scar, she froze in shock, fear flickering in her eyes. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching silently. Logan raised a hand to cover his face, then turned toward me, his eyes full of expectation. He wanted comfort, sympathy, anything from me. But I only gave him a faint smile. "If there's nothing else, I'll be going." His eyes filled with hurt as I walked away without hesitation. Behind me, Jenna's voice rose in a hysterical scream. "You love her, don't you, brother? You really love her, don't you?" How ridiculous. Just moments ago, she'd recoiled from the scar on his face, unable to even look at him. Yet now, because of the way he looked at me, she was spiraling into chaos. Some love it wasn't depth of feeling, only possessiveness, turned into habit. By the time Logan returned home, I had already packed my bags. He sat down across from me, and I placed the divorce agreement, long overdue, for his signature in front of him. Instead of signing, he tore it in half. Then he stood gripping my shoulders and forcing me to meet his eyes. "Aubrey Sullivan, you're disgusted by me, is that it? My face can be fixed with surgery. My leg. I'll do physical therapy until I recover. Is that why you're throwing me away?" "How is that my problem?" I replied coldly, my tone dripping with contempt. Why? Why do you want a divorce? Because I ignored you before. You could have just told me." His voice rose, almost shouting. I didn't answer. I simply took an old Apple phone from my bag and placed it in front of him. His face went pale, as if lightning had struck him. He stood frozen, stunned into silence. No, we're not related by blood. You know that. We're not what you think we are." I gave a cold laugh, my gaze dripping with mockery. "You don't see her as your sister, huh? This is how you love your sister, Logan." Pierce's face tightened. In a flash of anger, he smashed the phone in his hand, then yanked my suitcase toward him. His eyes burned with stubbornness. I've never lied to you. All these years, I haven't even contacted Jenna. You can't give me one more chance, Aubrey. Don't tell me you don't care about me at all. You still came to the hospital, you cooked for me, you brought me food. You still did all that. Looking at him now, he seemed nothing more than a pathetic clown. I couldn't help but remember my past self, how even when the truth was staring me in the face, I'd grasp at scraps trying to hypnotize myself into believing he loved me, that he just didn't know how to show it. But now, the roles had reversed. I looked at him and smiled faintly. Logan, if you were me, could you forgive? He froze, lowering his head, speechless. I stood ready to take my suitcase and leave, but suddenly he grabbed my wrist, his voice laced with threat. Aubrey, your mother's condition can't handle any kind of shock, at least not for another year or two. Are you sure you want her to find out about our divorce? Do you think one successful surgery means she's completely out of danger? Rage ignited inside me. Using my mother as leverage, he could still stoop this low. I couldn't hold back. My hand whipped across his face in a sharp slap. He didn't flinch. His voice stayed steady. Hit me if you want, but I'm not divorcing you. He seemed to think clinging to me, refusing to let go, would make me give up. But the hatred in me kept churning. How could I move on? When my best years, the child I had longed for my entire life, had been destroyed by him and Jenna, so I let him drag my suitcase back, deciding I'd stay a little longer, long enough to watch who would break first. In the days that followed, Logan sold most of his shares in the company, claiming he wanted more time for family. He woke early every day, cleaned the house until it was spotless, always replaced the flowers I liked. His cooking, once inedible, became refined, colorful, full of flavor. He also handled every detail of my mother's post-surgery care, from contacting doctors to overseeing her recovery. I accepted it all with calm indifference, deliberately making him uncomfortable. I took calls from admirers right in front of him. I wore a sparkling necklace gifted by Dominic Wu right around my neck where Logan could see. Once he reached out to rip it off, but under my cold stare, his hand froze midair before awkwardly retreating. The next day he came home with a table full of jewelry, his voice almost pleading. Please, no, don't wear that one anymore. So this is what it felt like watching someone lower themselves, beg, feeling your own sense of superiority rise. Wasn't this how he had treated me before? Lately, Logan had become obsessed with cosmetic surgery. He constantly stared in the mirror, anxiously touching the scar on his face. He even fought with Jenna about it. One day, Jenna called me, her voice brimming with fury. You're the reason my brother ended up like this. I laughed. Oh, so I should attempt suicide so he can heroically save me, get a ruined face and a crippled leg, just like he did for you. You're his wife. Shouldn't you be taking care of him? Her words made me laugh harder, the kind of laugh that's more anger than humor. A wife could never compete with a sister, right? Your bond is so noble, who could possibly get in the way? And if you can't stand it, maybe you should try killing yourself again. Might light that heroic spark in him one more time. Aubrey Sullivan. She snapped, her voice shaking with rage through the phone. But I didn't give her the chance to say more. I hung up. When I turned toward the window, my own faint reflection stared back, face-twisted eyes burning with rage. And I couldn't stop. I hadn't had enough revenge yet. Logan Pierce still dared to use my mother against me over and over again. He deserved every bit of this. The next morning at breakfast, I made sure to let my expression sour when I looked at his face. Catching it, he instinctively turned away and pulled a mask over his scar. I set my chopsticks down hard and walked away without a word. Every move I made seemed to slash at his pride. That afternoon, I joined Dominic Wu in a marathon. I always photographed well, and every picture I posted was carefully chosen, highlighting Dominic's youthful, energy-toned muscles and the sheen of sweat glistening in the sunlight. The shots spread quickly online. When I got home that night, the sight before me was shocking. Logan was beating his own leg with a golf club, while Jenna Morales knelt on the floor, crying and begging him to stop. The moment she saw me, Jenna turned, her voice full of accusation. Aubrey Sullivan, are you planning to cheat? You're not even divorced yet, I smirked. Then tell your brother to sign the divorce papers so I can date openly. Wasn't he the one who refused to let go? I ran a marathon and it was cheating. And the two of them, incest or some twisted obsession, whatever it was, I didn't care to hear. I gave her one look full of disgust, then slammed the door on my way out. That night at a work gathering, I drank more than usual. The venue was surrounded by trees and mosquitoes had left a few red welts on my neck. When I saw them in the bathroom mirror, I realized they looked suggestive. I dabbed on a bit more wine and rubbed lightly, making the marks even harder to interpret. On my way home, I bought a silk scarf and draped it loosely around my neck, half covering, half revealing. When I stepped into the house, I saw the floor covered in fresh flowers. Logan knelt on one knee, smiling softly at me. But the moment his gaze landed on my neck, his face darkened. Without a word, I untied the scarf right in front of him, exposing the marks, then walked into the bathroom. He started toward me but stopped mid-step, his eyes red, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. Quietly, I hid a paring knife in my room, ready to call the police if anything happened. Deep down, a flicker of regret stirred. Maybe I didn't need to keep dragging this out. But when I saw him again looking like a desperate man clinging to his last straw and heard him say, "Aubrey, we can pretend none of this ever happened. Let's just let the past go, please," I answered softly. But my words cut like a blade. "I can't." The simple sentence hit him like a boulder. He slumped into a chair, as if all the strength had drained from him. I went straight to my room, locked the door. That was the first night in a long time I slept peacefully. The next morning, I woke to the sharp metallic stench of blood. Logan had slit his wrists. When I opened the bathroom door, blood was pooling across the floor. He must have done it recently. He was still breathing when I got to him. I grabbed a towel, pressing it hard against the wound. Slowly, his eyes opened, his voice weak. "Is it only if I die that you'll forgive me?" I didn't answer. I simply called for an ambulance. The paramedics arrived quickly, whisking him away. Sunlight poured through the window, warm and bright, while the smell of blood still clung to the bathroom. Two worlds existing side by side, never touching. But suddenly I felt lighter. I had finally cornered him in his own agony, forcing him to taste even a fraction of what I had endured. Seeing him in such unbearable pain, my rational mind told me this was the moment to end it for good. I sat in the living room for a long while silent before standing up and going to my room to pack. I didn't have much. One suitcase was enough. This time I was certain I wouldn't be coming back. Divorce was complicated. Logan Pierce refused to sign the papers, and when I had to file a lawsuit, the process itself would take at least 6 months. Ours was even messier, complicated by asset division and his unstable mental state. When I felt trapped, Claudia Pearson returned from out of town. She brought someone with her to meet Logan, and shortly afterward he agreed to the divorce. In fact, he even left the majority of his assets to me. The woman Claudia had brought was middle-aged and bore a striking resemblance to Logan. From Logan Pierce's point of view, I didn't know why, but I couldn't let go. It was like clutching at the last straw to keep myself from drowning. The moment she sent me that umbrella through a delivery service, I knew something was slipping away from me forever. We had known each other for 7 years. I understood exactly how she loved, completely recklessly, giving everything without holding back. So when she stopped loving, I could feel it. Her eyes no longer held the warmth or sweetness I had once lived for, only disgust and distance. At first, when she left, I didn't think much of it. I told myself living alone wouldn't be so bad. But every night I came home, there was no light left on for me. No one put me above everything else anymore. When Jenna Morales spiraled into emotional outbursts, there was no one there to soothe my anxiety, to calm my darker moods. That was when I felt a kind of loneliness I'd never known before. I realized it most clearly at that banquet. I saw another man caring for her. In the past, other men had tried to approach her, but she had always kept her distance, afraid I might be upset. That night, she didn't turn him away. She let him look after her, let him stay close. I stood there, my mind blank. I wanted to pull her aside, demand an explanation, but her words, "We're about to get the divorce papers," hit me like a blow, snapping me into reality. It was then I knew I was truly about to lose the woman who had once given me her entire heart. For the first time in my life, I didn't know how to face myself. So when I found out her mother needed heart surgery, I instinctively used the most cowardly method to keep her by my side. I just wanted one more chance. I used to think the things she did for me were unnecessary. The surprise birthday gifts, the fresh flowers she brought every week, even the time she filled the entire refrigerator with bouquets because she thought I would like it. I thought it was foolish. What man cared about flowers? But she only wanted to share what she found beautiful with me. She was always full of a hunger to share, always able to spot magic in the smallest things. Once while we were on a train, she took a picture of the moon framed perfectly by the steel arm of a bridge and showed me with childlike excitement. She found joy in the tiniest details, like snapping a photo where the streetlights lined up with the moon and saying with a grin, "Logan Pierce, look 5 moons, aren't I amazing?" Back then, I would brush her off sometimes, not responding at all or giving her nothing more than a flat "yeah." Eventually, she became more cautious, sharing less. But she still cared, always asking about my health, always making sure I had the best of everything, even if she was exhausted herself. Before I met her, I had never been loved so fiercely. My mother died young, and my father remarried Jenna's mother. In that house, no one truly cared about me. Except for Jenna, I was nothing to them. So I didn't understand how precious her love was until I lost it completely. She stood in front of me, pulling out her iPhone, the phone that Jenna Morales had once deliberately locked. Back then, Jenna constantly pushed me toward Aubrey Sullivan. At the time, I only felt resentment, as if getting involved with Aubrey was my way of striking back at Jenna's interference. She told me Aubrey was carrying someone who would be a good match for me. I was furious who gave her the right to decide my life. That was why I intentionally pulled Aubrey into my orbit, just to defy her. I was a terrible man, but even the worst person when loved, if only for a moment, feels a faint flicker of conscience. It's just that at the time, I was so used to her devotion that I took it for granted. I didn't understand that in any close relationship, the one who gives warmth is like someone holding a block of ice. Eventually, they lose their own heat. Thinking back from the moment we were together, she was always anxious, always walking on eggshells, rarely smiling as freely as she had the first time we met. I had often told myself to forget the past and treasure the present. But when Jenna suddenly returned from afar, everything unraveled. I couldn't control it. My entire attention shifted toward her. It turned out the gun I had loaded years ago ended up firing straight at myself. I knew very well that once the past was exposed, there would be no future for me and Aubrey Sullivan. But I still lied to myself. I drew a circle around us, locking both her and myself in set, knowing full well she wanted to punish me. That was fine. I wanted to punish myself too. I even thought that unless I died, I would never let go. I remembered the day she walked into the hospital. From that day on, during countless long nights, I convinced myself she must still have a little bit of love left for me. I told myself that if I fixed my face, healed my legs, everything could go back to normal. If she could just feel a little pity for me, even like pitying a stray dog on the street, I could keep fooling myself. Then her best friend brought someone to meet me, my aunt, my mother's younger sister. She had been living abroad for many years and had only seen me once after my mother's death. That day when I called my stepmother Mom, my aunt's expression changed instantly. She turned and walked away without a word. Now she told me something that struck me like lightning. My mother had died because her closest friend had an affair with her husband. As expected, Jenna Morales turned out to be my half-sister, same mother, different fathers. My aunt urged me to stop, to end my mistakes. She said she had never imagined I would. I felt myself crumble completely. Aubrey stood outside the door, but I, like a wild animal, lunged at my aunt, gripping her throat to stop her from saying anything more. Aubrey forced the door open with help. She stood protectively in front of her best friend and my aunt, her posture guarded as if I were some dangerous lunatic. The way she looked at me then, like a blade cutting deep into my heart, tore me to pieces. No man could endure the woman he loves looking at him like that. But the pain didn't stop there. The weight of morality and blood ties lashed at me like a whip. I felt like a fish thrown onto dry land, gasping, suffocating. The last time I saw Jenna, I went to the place where we had first decided to start our relationship. Back then, she had fought with her mother and run away from home. I had searched for her in the rain, and when I found her, she hugged me and spoke with utter despair. "It doesn't matter if I die. No one cares about me anyway." I had held her tightly and said, "I care." That night, she kissed me and whispered, "Brother, I like you. I like you so much I could kill myself." Later, when my father and stepmother were in a car accident, Jenna was the one who ended things with me. She didn't just walk away, she made sure Mrs. Mai helped push me toward Aubrey Sullivan. Back then I hated her coldness, her indifference, her way of treating me like an object to be passed from one person to another. I wanted to let her have her way just to see if she would regret it later. And now, I have countless questions burning inside me. I want to know if she ever truly loved me at all. But before I could ask, she spoke first. Yes, that's exactly how it is, and don't you want to know who the father of the child is? You should take some responsibility too. I couldn't bear to hear more. I turned and fled. When I got home, I rushed into the bathroom, collapsed beside the toilet, and vomited until I was dizzy. After Aubrey Sullivan's story, I thought I would never have anything to do with Logan Pierce again for the rest of my life. But then while I was on vacation with Claudia Pearson and my mother trying to relax and clear my mind, I unexpectedly received news that he had died. That day, Claudia was driving a jet ski, taking me skimming across the ocean waves. Logan's attorney kept calling over and over until I couldn't stand it anymore. Finally, we decided to stop at a small harbor. The sea breeze whipped through my hair, and this time the voice on the other end of the phone came through. Clearly, Logan Pierce was dead. He had used a bath towel tied to a clothes hook to strangle himself in the bathroom. At over 6 feet tall, all he had to do was stand up to survive. But he chose to kneel in a humiliating posture to end his life. All the money he had left, he left to Jenna Morales' child. But he did leave me a small plot of land in the suburbs. On that land, he had hired someone to plant nothing but sunflowers. His lawyer conveyed 2 messages from him. Back then, those sunflowers in the fridge were beautiful. I just couldn't say it. I'm sorry for disturbing your life. Sometimes endurance doesn't bring you a vast sky, it only emboldens the other person to push you further. After Logan's death, Jenna Morales began spreading rumors online accusing me of forcing him to take his own life. Claudia, in an effort to protect me, revealed some things she knew. We debated whether to use them to respond since the information didn't only involve adults, but also children. But then, unexpectedly, one of Jenna's own close friends publicly shared an old set of text messages. In those messages, people learned that Jenna often lost control of her emotions and mental state, yet it didn't stop her from going into business with others. She would disappear, spend all the money, then fake suicide whenever she was cornered. The patience of those around her was like a volcano waiting to erupt, and eventually it did. In one message, Jenna wrote, "I just want to find someone to take care of my brother. Aubrey Sullivan is the kind of woman who's half in love, half infatuated, financially independent, even able to share expenses or pay more. She's also capable, good at managing daily life, so just pick her." Her arrogance and disdain for others were disgusting. She was a woman herself, yet she was willing to push another woman into such a situation. Before, whenever her bad behavior was exposed, she would hide behind the excuse of depression or emotional instability. But this time, no one was willing to excuse her anymore. People who truly suffered from depression stepped forward to say, those with depression harm themselves, not plot schemes day and night. How could someone this selfish be called depressed? Within just 2 or 3 days, her followers dropped by hundreds of thousands. Her fame had come from sharing her story with her brother, but now it all crumbled overnight. Unable to handle the criticism this time, she truly attempted suicide. But like the boy who cried wolf, no one was willing to donate blood to save her. Members of the Rare Blood Type Network agreed to refuse, saying, "Someone like this is just wasting our blood and kindness." Without a timely transfusion, her brain was deprived of oxygen, leaving her permanently disabled. I no longer cared about her. That was simply the retribution she deserved. One day, while sunbathing on an island, I happened to flip open a book to a page where the main character gave a piece of advice. What has passed is as if yesterday has died. What is coming is like today, just beginning. To me, it was the same. That page of my life, I had closed it.